to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, you Road to Growth listeners. Today I have Kelli Reese. She is a soulful leadership coach. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This is a question I ask to all the coaches, mentors, everyone out there, consultants. How do you separate yourself from other coaches, other senseis, consultants? How would you separate yourself from them?
That's a great question. You know, the thing that I like to help my clients get to is a point where they don't need me. They don't need to continue going down that healing path at the level that they do when they first get to me. My goal is for them to be able to stand on their own, have their own back, rely on who they are, and trust themselves. And I work individually with them because of the work that I do is so deep. So I think that sets me apart in how I work, and the goal that I have for them, you know, is for them to, even during the process, is for them to completely rely on their own guidance, their own intuition. I'm there to ask the right questions and as a mentor and guide, but I'm not feeding them all the answers because I don't know what's best for their life. I don't know what's best for them. They know. They just don't know that they know.
Now you're talking about, so is it kind of getting into self-realize, I guess, kind of where the answer's at, or is there, what's that process?
So the women I work with, they're high level in business management, corporate, their own businesses, entrepreneurs, founders, and they've gotten to this role by pushing themselves really hard to get there. And at some point, all that pushing stops working, and they look around and think, whoa, this is what I worked so hard for. And they feel like something's missing and they just don't know what it is. And they're questioning themselves. They realize that pushing's not working anymore. So that's their go-to way. And so they start feeling like they're not good enough. They overcompensate. All their perfectionism stuff comes up. And so what I really do is I help them overcome their self-worth issues. They have chronic self-worth issues, and it's not imposter syndrome.
What's the difference between self-worth and imposter syndrome?
So the self-worth issues that I deal with, a lot of times when people come to me, they think they have imposter syndrome because they're dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with perfectionism, they're dealing with not feeling good enough. The self-worth that the way that I work with my clients around self-worth is that it's chronic self-worth, and it's things that happened to them when they were younger in their childhood. And so they're reacting to situations in their work life, which bleeds over into their personal life, that actually are triggered from childhood wounding. So a lot of different levels of that.
So
and that's what we work on.
So you would define self-worth, I guess, as more
not feeling good enough. It's a chronic, the way that I work is that it's chronic, and it's this chronic feeling of just not feeling good enough.
And then how would you define imposter syndrome? Just a hurdle to come over, a mindset in the moment?
Yeah, or? I think that the way that people approach imposter syndrome, everybody has some level of imposter syndrome at some point. And the way that people approach imposter syndrome isn't necessarily working for the reasons that my clients are struggling. And so that's how I came upon the way that I work with my clients, because I thought I had imposter syndrome as well. And it was born completely out of my own experience from running a $34 million organization and working my way to the top of a 17-year career. And then realizing, one, all that pushing had taken my health and it was no longer working for me. You know, it was like, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so then when I was left without, like, okay, I'm at the top, now what? Then I was left with, okay, what's missing? And then I realized this isn't even what I want to do. But while I was realizing all of these different things, I was feeling incredibly filled so much anxiety and questioning myself, second guessing, which wasn't how it was before. It was just like I had a goal, I was focused, you know. And so the things that people use to deal with imposter syndrome were not working for me. And so I was like, I have to go deeper. This isn't just a case of imposter syndrome, me not feeling good enough. I'm going to push through. A lot of times they deal with the fear factor and just pushing through and showing up and keep doing that. That's not necessarily working. Will work with the people that I work with.
Well, let's talk about a young Kelli. Let's rewind a little bit. Who was a young Kelli?
Who was a young guy? How far do you want to rewind?
Oh, rewind. Right. Okay, you were born. I'm joking. No, I mean, were you at a young age, let's say like a little kid, memories that you've gone back, were you leading the pack? Were you kind of behind the pack?
I was leading the pack for a while. I led the pack for a while. I was really outgoing. I remember something that I read in my mom saved everything. And so I read something that like a second grade teacher wrote, like, Kelli knows all the answers. She raises her hand all the time. She needs to let other people chime in. So that could be taken as she's really smart, or she's a know-it-all and she needs to shut the hell up, So, but I was tempered. And I had some experiences happen to me. I was sexually abused when I was 5 years old, and I did not remember until I was 20, but every decision that I made between 5 and 20 was predicated on that experience. I just didn't know that at the time. And so I got into drugs really young, and I tried to escape at every turn. And I did all kinds of drugs. I was smoking pot at 11. I tried to escape and get out of myself and just do anything to not be here. I just remember one time looking at the sky and just yelling, like, I knew there was something else, some other energy out there. And I do a lot of energy work in the work that I do. And I just yelled and was like, just tell me what the F I'm supposed to do here so I can get the hell off this planet, So it was not, it wasn't idyllic, but, all those experiences have really led me to the work that I do and the way that I'm able to help people. I work with a lot of women who have issues from parental stuff, trauma. They've had experiences similar to mine. They have eating disorders. They're in recovery, those kind of things. And I wouldn't be able to help them and do the work that I do without having those experiences. But young Kelli, I would say, was acting out, avoiding school, cutting school, and hanging out with boys.
Well, how did you come to realize that the issues were coming from when you were sexually abused at 5? Was it self-realization that you needed help, or was it an exterior figure? What happened there?
So I knew I wasn't happy. I had moved after college. I moved to New York City, and so, change of scenery kind of thing. And I knew I wasn't happy, and it was really easy to kind of disappear into New York City. That was the nice thing. In New York in my 20s, it was kind of like, I always like to say, I kind of threw up all over New York City and nobody really cared. And so I was watching an episode of Oprah, and there was a woman on Oprah who was describing what happened to her. And when she described that, everything came rushing back. And I was like, oh my God, it was like a floodgate opened because it was so familiar. And I just remembered. And so my first thought, and I remember it clearly, was, well, I got this far and it didn't affect me, so it must not be a big deal. But that wasn't true. And so it took me another, that was probably when I was 22, another 3 years to go to really hit bottom and decide I can't live like this. And so in New York, I walked into an AA meeting. They were everywhere. And in AA, I remember sitting in that room looking around and thinking, God, these people look really happy. And they were smiling, for the most part, they felt good. And I was like, I really want what they have. And if this is what they did to get that, then I'm in,
So you went to college. Now, a person that was, I guess, sexually abused, trying to find a way out, screaming to the world, taking drugs. I mean, college is not a mandatory thing. I guess some level of education is cool.
My parents they forced me to go to college. I hated school. I did not want to go. I made an agreement. I said, I'll go to college if I can. I'm going to major in what I want to major in. So I
Yeah.
did theater. I love doing theater. So I became a theater major. And so my degree is in theater.
Did you have a close relationship to your parents?
My parents were the age of, they're both gone. My parents were the age of my friend's grandparents. They had me really late in life. And so I wouldn't say we were close. My sister has a very different experience with my parents. She hears about what I say. She's 8 years older, and it's like we had two different family dynamics. It's really interesting. But no, I wouldn't say I was close. My dad chose discipline over love. We worked it out in the end, but that was really hard to grow up with. By his admission, he chose discipline over love. And my mom was, I learned how to be fearful from her. She was afraid of everything.
Oh, wow.
They both loved me in the way that they knew how, but they did not how to know. I think they probably knew I was the rebel and the things that I was doing. They didn't know to the extent, they didn't know I was taking hardcore drugs and doing crazy shit. But they looked the other way a lot of the time because they just didn't know what to do about it.
Did they look away, or what happened with the sexual abuse when that happened at a young age?
So they didn't know. Nobody knew. The person that he had said to me, this is our secret, all the things that they tell you. And so told me not to tell anybody. And I didn't, When I remembered, I ended up from New York. My dad was living in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area. And from New York, I did eventually end up calling my dad and telling him, hey, this is what happened. He put a lot of pressure on me to be the way he wanted me to be in him trying to help me avoid the mistakes that he made. But, he gave me mixed messages. You can do whatever you want as long as, it was kind of like followed up with as long as you have health insurance, or as long as you. So I did end up calling him and telling him that. And that was the phone call where he told me, I chose discipline over love. And I left a lot to your mother, and I should have done that differently. And that did start a healing process for us, but it was a long road for sure. But he didn't know. He said, I had no idea that happened. If I had known, he apologized.
When you were, so you're in college, you kind of realize everything that kind of went on as a child. I've had other people on that had similar situations, and there's kind of a mixed bag. Some people blame themselves that they allowed it to happen, and other people blame basically the people they had around them. Were you looking at either direction, or how did that, looking back on it?
No, and I didn't. I remembered when I was in New York. I had already graduated from college, was in New York already. No, I was just mad.
Okay.
I was just mad at the world. I was mad at, if you could put up with me, then you were my friend. It was pretty much how I viewed things.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was really, for most of my childhood, I was emotionless. I can even recall being a cheerleader in high school, and, you have to have some amount of energy. And doing the cheers, I was just like, go. I was very emotionless. I was very controlled. Everything was about trying to control everything.
Now, graduate college, yourself kind of healing yourself, and then from there you go into the corporate world.
I went to New York for acting. I went to continue on after college to acting school, so that's how I ended up in New York. And I was temping, and as an actor, you're either a waitress or a temp. So I was temping, and I did start working for a Wall Street investment firm, and that's where I started working in corporate. It's amazing to me that I ended up in a desk job, because I hated that job so much. I ended up working at this investment banking firm for, 2 years, putting myself through acting school, and it was challenging. I was the assistant to the CFO and the CEO, and it was very misogynistic, and it was bad. It was not a good experience. There were some days the elevator would open and I would feel physically ill stepping off that elevator to go into that place. So, so I left as soon as I could. The money was really good. It's the most money I had made in a long time.
How long did it take you to leave there?
2.5 years.
Okay. And then 2.5 years, where do you go to next?
I became a waitress.
Okay.
I started waiting tables, and then I went to AA and to get my head on straight, and realized, oh my God, it's like a fog lifts, and then I was 60 days in AA and my mom died. And so that just kind of threw me for a loop. And it was my mom dying I had gone out to her funeral. And when I got back, I called the company and told them I was never coming back. And so I got that out of order a little bit. But I had gone to AA, and then 60 days later she died, and then I didn't return back. So I spent 6 months just kind of flailing, going to AA meetings, trying to stay sober, and wanting to just get somewhere other than where I was. It was like so painful to lose my mom and be by myself in New York. I had friends in New York, but I felt really alone. I think that was one of the most profound things. I never wanted to be alone. I hated spending time with myself alone. But even when I was with people, I also felt really isolated and alone. So it was kind of like this perpetuating thing where it was just this deep loneliness that I felt like I carried around with me everywhere.
And then from there, you take 6 months off, just flailing.
Yeah, I was rollerblading up and down the Hudson.
Oh, wow. Okay. And still carrying on the acting
Riding
dream?
bikes. I was in therapy and I was in AA.
And were you still carrying on the acting dream?
What was I? I was waiting tables. So yeah, I must have been thinking I was dating actors. But yeah, I still was thinking I wanted to be an actress. And eventually what my acting career led to was I gave myself 5 years when I left college. I said, I'll give my 5 years. And if I'm not at a level that I think I need to be at, then I'll do something else. I didn't know what that something else was, but I ended up opening a restaurant, which seemed like a really good idea because I had waited tables. It didn't work out that way.
So you gave up acting and opened up a restaurant?
I did. I opened a vegan vegetarian restaurant in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
How did that turn out?
It was, well, the restaurant was there. I'll say this. It was a cluster, and I didn't know what I was doing. But the restaurant, I had a partner. The restaurant that we created was there for 17 years. So it couldn't have been all bad. But I was totally bankrupt when I left that place. And I knew that I needed to not be doing restaurant work any longer because it's just exhausting. So had the restaurant for 3 years and then left New York and on a whim moved to Asheville, North Carolina.
And what kind of job did you get there?
So I had loved baking at my restaurant. And so I became a baker, and that didn't last long because I did not like the hours. So then I went on the road selling cookware, high-end cookware at home and garden shows all across the country, which was great because I love traveling. And so for a year, I just traveled and sold cookware at, those people that you see doing the cookware demonstrations at home and garden shows and fairs. I was doing that, and I made great money. It was great because I had a script. I loved cooking. It was like these two things, the acting and the cooking came together, and I loved the cookware. I still have it to this day. So it worked out really well.
Well, I guess while you were finding kind of what path to go down, were you finding more about who you were? And were you as angry as you were before? Or?
Oh, I was pissed. Yeah.
Okay.
I was still angry. Yeah. And it's like AA. What I realized, I didn't end up staying in AA because what I realized was I wasn't addicted to alcohol. I was addicted to escape, and alcohol was just one of the ways that I chose try to escape. There was a lot of different other ways. The anger was just a barrier to keep people distance from me so that I didn't have to engage at a level that would, set me up for further hurt. So I kept people at a distance. I had really thick walls around me. And at that time, I was also in an abusive relationship. So the person who was my business partner was also verbally and physically abusive. And so when I realized, like, I've got to get out of this relationship, I say it like I had to plot my escape so that it sounds dramatic, but I wanted to do it so that I would be free from him, because we had a lot of things tied up together, and I didn't want to have to deal with him ever again. So I really methodically thought out all these different processes and made him believe that it was his idea to, for him to move to Florida. But it took some time to unravel myself from that relationship and that experience. So I was I didn't make very good decisions most of the time. It was just kind of like, I didn't ever really ask myself, is this what you want to be doing? Is this right? How does this feel? It was just kind of like, oh, this is what showed up next. Okay, I guess this is where I'll go. Moving from New York City to Asheville, North Carolina, it's like I went down there for, I don't know, 22 hours or something like that, just to check it out, and was like, okay, I can live here. And then moved everything after living in New York for 9 years down to North Carolina, not really ever thinking, oh yeah, I'd love to go to North Carolina. It just kind of happened. So my picker was broken. I never really picked. I picked some winners for, to spend some time with. But once in Asheville, and he was the person I was with also selling cookware. We were doing this thing together. So it really took a good year, split things apart and get things separated, to where I was like, okay, I'm keeping this house that we rented. I'm keeping the truck, and then got him some things for him to go. He really wanted to go live in Florida. So it was like, great, here's my out,
No.
And then just made sure I was locked down from then on, as far as communication and things like that.
And then when did you end up moving to Mexico? Was that from?
Oh my gosh. I've kind of lived all over.
Okay.
So I went New York to North Carolina to Montana to Colorado, back to California, and then and I got married in there. The person after the abusive relationship I married, he was wonderful. He's my ex-husband now. We're still really good friends, but I didn't have enough time to be on my own, or I showed up in that relationship with a lot of internal damage, that I hadn't had a chance to really wrestle with, kind of that inner work that needed to happen. And so that contributed to killing the marriage for sure. There's 2 people in that marriage, obviously, but and I wrote my second book is about what happened in that marriage, and how I came to understand, that person that I was with was no longer the person I was meant to be with. Even though I loved him, and even though, for the most part, things were pretty good. I just knew. So after I left my job, that 17-year career, which almost killed me. And then I left my marriage 18 months later, and then I moved to Mexico.
So that 17-year career, it was at one company?
No. So I worked in natural food. So my restaurant was, I kept the theme.
Yeah.
My restaurant was a vegan vegetarian restaurant. And so I thought, after selling the cookware, was, well, if I work in natural foods or some kind of market, I'll get a discount toward my eating habit, because I had a habit of eating healthy food. So I got the discount. So I ended up working for natural foods cooperatives, and I did work for one privately owned natural foods market when I was in Montana. But for the most part, I went from different food cooperatives around the country, and ended up managing one in California, which was the $34 million organization that I was running.
Your story, I mean, it sounds like, you talked about the idea that trying to find a way out, not finding the right location, movement, and kind of just constantly moving around, trying to be okay, I guess, in your own skin.
Yeah.
Are you currently okay in your own skin?
Are you asking because I live in an Airstream?
No, I mean,
No, I'm kidding.
we each fall in our avenue. Maybe that's basically where you're meant to be.
Well, I do love traveling. My home is in an Airstream, and part of that is because I never really know where I'm going to end up. I before COVID, I was doing retreats and called Sacred Soul Journeys, taking women to different places around the globe, and doing these journeys. But I had to stay put with COVID, so I was like, well, I'll get an Airstream, and that's kind of the best of both worlds. But yeah, when I left Mexico, that was in 2017, and that was, for me, that's when the healing really began. I had been doing work all along since I was in AA. I knew I wasn't going to drink again in the way that I did before, because what AA gave me was a connection to source, to spirit, to God, whatever you want to call it. I was not going to let anything get in the way of that connection that I had found again. And so for me, I knew that I wasn't at a risk for drinking again because I felt that so strongly. And I've been healing all along the way, but leaving the country, going out on my own, traveling by myself, working with different healers around the world. There was a healer in Bali that I worked with that, that process brought me back to myself. And that is really what allowed me to finally settle into being comfortable in my skin.
Do you think if you would have gone through the process that you went through in Bali earlier on, it would have had the same lasting effect on you?
No. I think every single thing happened at the exact time that it was meant to. I worked with somebody in Tulum. I had gone to Tulum a year and a half earlier before I'd moved there, and I had worked with somebody there, and I knew I needed to go back and work with that person because he was all about, the work that he did was all about heart opening. And I knew, like, my heart was locked down. It was very much, there was walls on top of walls to protect me. No matter how hard I wanted to say, I'm willing to be present here in this with you or with myself, there was a level of separation, And so for me, working with the people that I worked with happened in the order that it needed to happen in order for me to get where I am now.
Is there, like, when you work with clients and someone's, maybe you can kind of see a piece of you in them emotionally, right? Yet their work is going well, they're stable there. I mean, how much do you kind of give them guidance on where they need to get to, or allow the journey to happen, or just kind of push them on that journey, or what happens there?
So are you saying that, but there's something going on and they don't know what it is, kind of thing?
There's something going on. And I know you talked about the idea that you had to go through the stuff you went through to get to where you are now in a good place.
Right.
Yet, is there ways to allow those people to move faster to get to the place that you are now?
It's so great that you asked that question. Part of the work that when I left my job, when I left my career, I wanted to help people transform and heal. It's just part of who I am. I loved coaching in my job. I loved the professional development work for the people that I worked with. And so that's what I took with me as I have been working with women and clients over the last, 5 or 6 years. 2 years ago, I was like, all right, universe, I know this can be faster. My people need this to happen faster than this 25-year journey that I've been on trying to figure this crap out, going, what the hell is going on? Come to find out, there really was nothing to figure out. It was just part of the journey, right? But so I started really diving deeply into traditional Chinese medicine and how we hold emotions. Emotions get stuck in our body. And that's where I started coming at the challenges that my clients have. And that's when things started really picking up. So the program that I do now is 6 months, and it's very transformative. And there's other things that happen beside just clearing work with the body. But for me, I had to address the things that were stuck within my body because of the fact that I tried affirmations. I tried mindset. I tried all of the things they tell you to try, and it didn't work. It did not budge. I had to add in that piece of there's emotions that get lodged, right? And if you freeze up when something bad happens to you, you're not allowing anger or frustration, or there's so many different things, but they get lodged in our body and they get stuck. And so those are the things that's where I come at it from, rather than the mind stuff. We do work on mindset and different things, but I have to approach what's going on in their body first. And I can see it when they're talking. I can see them tense up, or, sometimes it's really subtle, but it's there. And once we do clearings of the things that are within their body, that's when they reach out the next day and they're like, oh my God, I feel so much different. Or I was able to do a 600-person presentation today and I didn't even think twice about it, or that kind of thing,
Do you remember the moment when you felt strong enough in who you were to feel comfortable enough to help other people get to where they need to get to?
No.
Okay.
I'm like, I think I'm still working on that. And I think that's to my benefit, because I feel like I'm one of those people who's always searching and always I'm a seeker, And so not only am I seeking to go more deeply with myself, but I'm also seeking to go more deeply in the work that I do. And so I don't know if I'll ever feel, the word that's coming up is satisfied, but I don't know if I'll ever feel like, oh yeah, this is it. I got it. It keeps morphing and changing. And I think for me, that works really well. But I also think for my clients, it's really beneficial because I add in and bring in new things and refine as I take more and more women through the program that I have.
If we're talking, let's say in 5 years from now, where do you plan to be? Where do you think your business is going to be?
It's so funny because my mind is like, you're working on being in the moment. Like, yeah, it's so interesting because a lot of the work that I do, I will say, like, I call them divine downloads. It just comes in. I don't feel like my process is kind of let it come in and flow, and just let it be there and then act on it. And thankfully I have amazing women who I work with who, like, okay, here's what dropped in. This is what happened last year. I was like, are you willing to let me take you through this 6-month program? And a number of them said yes. And so I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. I would love to put down roots. I love where I'm living right now. And so I could see how I like to have a place that feels like I have an anchor somewhere rather than just traveling. I need an anchor. I learned that after the 2 years of traveling. I need to have a place where my roots are, and then I can go off and do stuff. But I don't know.
How do you? I think there's some people that live for the moment, some people live for the future, right? And it's finding that sweet spot, that balancing act of doing for both. For yourself, how do you weigh the opportunity of the now compared to basically the ramifications of what that opportunity might have down the road, or your plan down the road?
I'm a huge planner.
Okay.
So you're the planner in me, the logical mind is like, oh yes, let's talk about this. I love planning. I have also seen that I could plan everything out perfectly, and it doesn't come out the way that I plan. And so I've learned to just live more in the flow of things, which for a planner is not super easy. For a recovering control lover, somebody who like had to control all the pieces in the marriage, with my partner, my ex, with me, it's been challenging and rewarding to just let go and flow and just trust in where this path is going. Because it isn't always exactly the way that I want it to be, but I've learned to just, after moving so many times and being all over the place, I've learned to just allow myself to in AA, we call it surrender. I don't totally love that term. Flow works better for me. But for me to just let go and stop trying to control all the pieces is what set me free.
Is there anything that, if you could talk to your younger self, that 20-year-old woman, any advice, any feedback, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I would definitely, that I had mentioned this earlier, that there's nothing to figure out. I spent so long trying to figure out how to be happy, how to feel better, how to heal, how to have a perfect relationship, how to be better, how to do all the things right, how to figure out what was missing. It's just like the thing that I'm talking about, that just kind of letting go and being in the moment and flowing, that piece, that is so much easier than just sticking with this idea that there's something to figure out. Because anytime I tried to figure it out anyways, it didn't work out the way that I imagined, hoped, planned, wrote in my journal, whatever, so yeah, there's nothing to figure out. It's the big secret. It's what I would tell myself.
Well, thank you, Kelli, for being here. Hopefully everyone listening, got some great nuggets from you. If someone's listening and they want to basically, they see that they're a young Kelli and they want to get to where you are now, what's the best way of them reaching out to you, or maybe finding one of your books and getting more about your story?
Yeah, my books are on Amazon, Destiny Roadmap and the Relationship Roadmap. And then they can reach out to me at my website too, kellireese.com.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Kelli, again for being here.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
please reach out, find Kelli. Please subscribe, please share. And again, thank you, Kelli. Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Bye.